Chapter 21 Towards the Tower. The road beneath the wheels of the chariot turned from a dusty trail to a more defined path as I ventured towards my destination. Each mile traversed felt like a step closer to the unknown, the landscape around me slowly changing. It was whispered among travelers and adventurers alike that the tower exuded a malefic aura so potent it caused the very land around it to succumb to decay. This eerie phenomenon served as an ominous beacon to those seeking the tower, a sign that their journey was drawing them ever closer to its enigmatic presence. It was said that the land's gradual withering as one neared the tower, a stark contrast to the natural beauty that flourished behind me. Before my approach, the landscape around me was indeed breathtaking. The sunlight bathed the earth in a warm, golden glow, offering a sense of comfort and easing the burdens of travel. Flower beds in vibrant hues dotted the path, their fragrance and beauty a balm to the soul, uplifting the spirits of all who passed by. It was a picturesque scene, one that seemed almost too idyllic, given the destination that lay ahead. Yet, now, as I ventured closer to the tower, a subtle shift began to make itself known. The vibrant greenery gradually gave way to patches of land where the earth seemed less fertile, the plants less vigorous. The once bright and inviting flora started to show signs of distress, their colors dimming, as if the very life was being drained from them. This gradual transformation was unsettling. The stark contrast between the thriving beauty of the distant landscape and the encroaching blight near the tower was a powerful testament to the aura that emanated from it. It was as if the tower cast a long shadow, under which nothing could truly thrive. This shift served as a tangible indicator of my proximity to the tower, reinforcing the tales I had heard since young. Despite this, my resolve did not waver. If anything, the changing environment only strengthened my determination to reach the tower. As the landscape unfurled before me, transforming from a dense thicket into an immense open field, my sense of anticipation escalated. This vast expanse, almost bewildering in its scope, sprawled under the sky. Here, amidst the openness, lay a makeshift society of adventurers, their chariots, tents, and camps dotting the landscape in a chaotic symphony. It was a place devoid of the usual comforts of civilization, no houses to shelter, no inns to rest, only the flatness of the landscape, the adventurers, and the tower. The tower itself commanded the horizon, an architectural colossus that seemed to defy both physics and imagination. Even though my journey suggested hours before arriving at its gates, its presence was so monumental, so overpoweringly vast, it felt as if I could reach out and touch it. Rising into the heavens, piercing the clouds, it was a marvel that seemed to exist in a realm between the earth and the sky. Whispers of history so profound, my mind reeled at the thought of what lay within. Incredible, I thought to myself, the sight rendering me momentarily speechless. The air around was alive with the energy of those gathered, a melting pot of cultures and dreams, all united by the tower. The murmur of voices, the clanging of armor, the rustle of maps, each sound was a note of anticipation that filled this place. As I advanced through the open path that led towards the tower, the diversity of those gathered here became even more apparent. It was a melting pot of individuals from all corners of the world, a vivid tapestry of races, genders, and ages all drawn to this singular point. Humans mingled with elves, dwarves laughed with beastmen, and amongst them, individuals of ages ranging from youthful zeal to seasoned wisdom, all united by the common goal of conquering the tower. The occasional shout of someone seeking to form or join a party for the challenges ahead. My ears caught snippets of dialogue, each adventurer pitching their skills and experience in hopes of finding the right companions for their ascent. Looking for a party, a young human called out, her voice carrying over the crowd. I'm a level 11 scout, skilled in trap detection. Beside her, a sturdy dwarf, his armor gleaming under the sun, added, and I'm a level 18 marauder. Skilled in both offense and defense. Need someone to take the hits and dish them back? I'm your dwarf. Not far from them, an elven archer, lean and poised, scanned the crowd. Level 25 archer here, seeking a balanced group. I paused, listening to these declarations, each adventurer eager to showcase their strengths and experiences. It was a reminder of the tower's allure, the way it beckoned to all who sought adventure, knowledge, or glory within its walls. The variety of classes and levels on display was a testament to the tower's reputation as a crucible for those brave enough to face its trials. So many seeking the same thing, I mused inwardly, each with their own story, their own reason for being here. The closer I drew, the more it appeared the tower loomed over the landscape. After another hour of weaving through the sea of adventurers, each step bringing me closer to my destination, I finally stood before the tower. The reality of its presence was overwhelming, its sheer scale, the way it pierced the clouds and seemed to touch the very fabric of the sky, was nothing short of awe-inspiring. Up close, the tower's surface was a labyrinth of intricate carvings. The stones themselves seemed to hum with a latent power, as if the tower was alive. Standing at its base, I felt a profound sense of insignificance. Adjacent to the tower, contrasting starkly with its ancient grandeur, stood a solitary building, the first sign of a human-made structure I had encountered since arriving here. Its design was practical, with sturdy wooden beams and stone foundations that spoke of durability rather than elegance. The building's sign, large and unmissable, read Adventurers Guild. The Adventurers Guild was a two-story structure, with wide windows that allowed light to spill onto the bustling interior. The entrance was flanked by two statues, each depicting a heroic figure in the midst of battle, a tribute to the bravery and spirit of those who dared to explore the tower. As I approached, the sound of lively conversation and clinking gear filled the air. Stepping inside, I was greeted by the sight of a well-organized space, walls lined with notice boards teeming with quests and lists of items for trade or sale. The air was thick with anticipation and the buzz of adventurers negotiating, planning, or sharing tales of their exploits. It was clear that the guild served as the heart of this transient community, a crucial nexus for anyone seeking to make their mark on the tower. Making my way through the bustling interior of the Adventurers Guild, I approached the reception, where a woman greeted me with a practiced smile. The warmth in her eyes suggested she had welcomed countless hopefuls like me. "What brings you to the Adventurers Guild today?" she inquired, her tone friendly yet efficient. "I wish to become an adventurer," I stated, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement at voicing my intention. "And I also have a few items to sell," I added, remembering the valuables I had collected. "You've come to the right place. To get started, I'll need you to fill in this registration form. It's standard procedure for all new adventurers." She slid a form across the counter towards me, along with a quill and inkpot. The form requested basic information, name, age, race, class, and any skills or specialties, thought the last two were optional requests. Each stroke of the quill felt like a step further away from my old life and deeper into the unknown that lay ahead. As the receptionist glanced over the filled document, a flicker of surprise crossed her face upon seeing the pyromancer class listed. Her eyes briefly lingered on the space where a family name would typically follow my given name, noticing that I had left it blank, providing only Cayenne without the expected Cayenne Arashi. For a moment, her expression betrayed a mix of curiosity and confusion. It was uncommon for someone of a notable class such as pyromancer to omit their family name, especially in a world where lineage often carried significant weight and prestige. However, her professionalism quickly shone through. Without voicing the questions that surely danced on the tip of her tongue, she simply nodded, her expression returning to its default state of welcoming efficiency. "Please, wait here while I process your document," she instructed, her tone as courteous as when I first approached. Her response, or rather her lack of inquiry into my incomplete name, was a testament to the guild's tenor. Here, in this place of new beginnings, what mattered was not one's past or lineage, but their present intention and future aspirations. It was a refreshing encounter, one that underscored the guild's role as a melting pot for individuals from all walks of life, each seeking to carve their own path, unburdened by the weight of their heritage or the expectations tied to their names. As she retreated to carry out the necessary procedures, I found myself silently waiting for the process to be completed. Chapter 22: Understanding the Tower's Functionality. As I lingered in anticipation, the wait seemed to stretch indefinitely, yet it was merely a short while before the receptionist made her way back to me. Your registration is now officially complete, Mr. Kyan, the receptionist declared, extending towards me a small, bronze badge that gleamed with the emblem of the Adventurers Guild. This badge not only confirms your membership but also signifies your initial ranking as an adventurer. It's your key to accessing the Guild's array of resources and services, from the quest board to the trading post. Please, ensure it remains with you at all times. She paused for a moment, her professional demeanor unwavering. You might already be familiar with the ranking system and the operational procedures within the tower, given the tales shared by many adventurers. However, it's customary for us to offer a brief overview to all newcomers. Would you be willing to spare a few additional minutes for this overview? Her proposal resonated with me. Indeed, stories and tips about navigating the guild and the tower were commonly exchanged among people, be it adventurers themselves or normal individuals, providing second-hand knowledge. Yet, standing here at the cusp of my own journey, I acknowledge the value in hearing these protocols directly from a guild official. There might be nuances or recent updates I hadn't caught wind of, information that could be crucial. I appreciate the offer. I responded, signaling my agreement with a nod. Please, proceed with the overview. The receptionist dove into an explanation that painted the tower not just as a structure, but as an enigma with its own set of rules and realities. The moment one steps into the tower, they're transported to a separate space or dimension, if you will, she began, her voice steady, ensuring I grasped the gravity of her words. No two incursions yield the same layout, it's a living puzzle, constantly reshaping itself. I leaned in, intrigued by the concept. So, no two adventurers experience the tower in the same way? Exactly, she confirmed. While the creatures on each floor maintain a consistent level of challenge, their variety and the environments they inhabit can change. Lower floors might offer familiar foes, but ascend, and you'll face entities beyond imagination. She paused for a moment, allowing the information to sink in, then continued with a cautionary note. Anyone offering maps of the tower's floors is almost certainly engaging in a scam. The nature of the tower ensures that each journey within its walls is distinct, rendering any maps fundamentally useless. Nonetheless, insights on the creatures that inhabit the tower can be of immense value, potentially offering life-saving information. However, it's important to exercise caution, as many fabricate details about non-existent creatures as part of their deception. Without a reliable method to verify the legitimacy of such information, acquiring it comes with inherent risks. Proceed with any purchases with caution. Her explanation shifted to the tower's progression system, a topic that seemed to pique her curiosity as much as mine. Though it's not fully understood, it's believed each floor contains a secret room and an event, both challenging to find and complete. Success in these endeavors, along with defeating enemies and clearing floors, earns points managed by the tower itself. These points are crucial, as they can be exchanged for items and skills every 5 floors at a designated merchant, whom is known to the adventurer as the Black Merchant. I've heard tales of the enigmatic Black Merchant, an entity as mysterious as the tower it calls home. Cloaked in secrecy, this individual is rumored to possess an untold trove of valuables. It's said that those who have dared to steal from this shadowy figure often find themselves facing dire warnings, sometimes even missing a few limbs as a chilling reminder of their folly. Her explanation prompted a question from me, born out of curiosity and a desire to fully understand the system that governed the tower. How does this point system interact with an adventurer's skill progression? She seemed to anticipate my question. Every adventurer begins their journey with limitations. Skills are milestones of growth. Your first passive skill emerges when an attribute reaches 10, and active skills manifest at age 15, though the ceremony and class can influence this. Now, let's discuss a critical aspect of personal development within the tower and how it assists in this growth. Every 5 levels, adventurers unlock what we refer to as a skill slot. This alternates between slots for passive and active skills. Hearing this for the first time, I was taken aback. I had assumed skills were acquired from the merchant and could be utilized at will. Could you elaborate on that? I asked, seeking clarity. Of course, she replied, her tone patient. Many newcomers misunderstand the process of acquiring passive and active skills. There's a common misconception that by simply delving into the tower, one can amass an unlimited repertoire of skills. However, this is far from the truth. For instance, if I were to sell you a skill book, which is the only method to learn a new skill, acquired through defeating monsters, discovering secret rooms and event, or purchasing from the tower's merchant, you'd find yourself unable to use it immediately. Do you know why that is? Does it have to do with the skill slot you mentioned earlier? Exactly, she confirmed. With every 5 levels gained, you unlock a skill slot, alternating between passive and active skills. When you reach level 5, your first slot will be for a passive skill, allowing you to learn one. At level 10, it'll be an active skill's turn, and so forth. I nodded, understanding dawning on me. But then, why would adventurers seek to climb beyond the 5th floor? Wouldn't it be more logical to stay within the first 4 floors, grinding levels and accumulating points to buy as many skills as possible? She smiled, a look that suggested she'd addressed this query more times than she could count. While that strategy seems logical at first glance, it's fundamentally flawed. Firstly, levels aren't gained by defeating monsters but by clearing floors. Each time you ascend to the next level, you're automatically granted an increase in level. This revelation was unexpected. I had presumed that defeating monsters would naturally lead to level progression, but the tower's system was more nuanced. And as for accumulating points, I ventured further, wouldn't it be advantageous to farm them and purchase multiple items from the merchant? Her smile broadened slightly, acknowledging the thought. If that were feasible, indeed, it would be advantageous. However, 2 primary reasons make this strategy impractical. First, point acquisition is finite. Monsters do not respawn within a floor once defeated. While we recommend defeating all monsters to maximize point gain, they won't reappear for endless farming. This limitation encourages adventurers to thoroughly explore each floor for secret rooms and events to gain additional points. Secondly, the tower's merchant imposes a strict limitation on purchases. You're allowed to buy only 1 article from each category per visit, meaning 1 skill and 1 item. After making your selection, further purchases are restricted, preventing any exploitation of the system. The receptionist concluded her overview of the tower's fundamental mechanics. This covers the basics of how the tower operates, she said, her eyes conveying the gravity of her next words. There's more, of course. The tower is vast and full of mysteries that have yet to be fully understood or documented. As you progress, you'll undoubtedly encounter phenomena that defy explanation. Your primary objective, above all, should be survival. I took a moment to digest everything she had shared. In a brief moment of reflection, I recapped the key points I had learned: the tower's dynamic nature, the importance of skill slots, level progression, finite points, and the uncharted nature of the tower itself. I thanked the receptionist for her invaluable insights. Thank you. You're most welcome. There's one last thing I'd like to address before we conclude: the ranking system. As it stands, you're designated as a bronze rank adventurer. It's important to understand that your rank will increase every 10 levels you achieve. The ranks range from F to S, with F being the lowest and S the highest. The receptionist's words caught my attention once more as she delved into the ranking system, a vital component of an adventurer's identity within the guild. The ranks are as follows: bronze, dark bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and mithril. Each time you reach a new rank, you'll need to return to us for an evaluation. We'll update your badge to reflect your current rank. Understood, I responded, absorbing the significance of the ranking system. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? The receptionist inquired, her smile unwavering and welcoming. I nodded, remembering the loot I had collected. Actually, yes. I've gathered a few items I'd like to sell. They're stored in my carriage. Also, I'm wondering if there's a place where I could safely leave my carriage. She responded promptly, her professionalism evident. Of course, we can take care of that for you. Just bring the items to us, and we'll assess their value. You can then decide whether to sell them directly to us based on our evaluation or opt to sell them yourself to other adventurers. As for your carriage, we offer a storage service at the rate of 1 silver per day for safekeeping. Alternatively, you're free to leave it outside, though without guaranteed security, or if you prefer, we can purchase it outright for a silver coin. Her comprehensive response provided me with options I hadn't fully considered. The idea of setting up a makeshift merchant corner was intriguing, offering the potential for direct interaction with other adventurers and perhaps even better prices. Yet, the convenience and immediacy of selling to the guild were tempting, especially given the uncertainty of individual sales. And if I choose to sell the items to you, how soon can I expect the evaluation to be completed? I asked, weighing my options. Typically, evaluations are completed within 24 hours, depending on the nature and quantity of the items. We aim to offer fair and prompt transactions to support our adventurers, she explained, her tone assuring. Considering her words, I decided to proceed with the guild's evaluation for the sake of efficiency and simplicity. I'll bring the items in for your assessment then. And for the carriage, I'll opt in selling it to the guild. The choice to sell the carriage was not made lightly. Reflecting on my journey and the foreseeable path ahead within the tower, it became clear that holding onto the carriage would serve no practical purpose. More than that, the carriage was a tie to the group I had traveled with, a group whose intentions had turned sour. Severing this connection felt like a necessary step to move forward, unencumbered by the past. We'll arrange for the purchase of your carriage. The silver coin we offer will be added to the total value of the items you're selling. I nodded, appreciative of the receptionist's tactful acknowledgement of my situation. Thank you, I appreciate the guild's accommodation. I thanked her for her help and went back to the carriage to grab the items I wanted to sell. The selling process was simple, and now all I had to do was wait for everything to be sorted out, which they said would take about a day. But I'm not the type to just sit around and wait. I should take a look around and see if there's anything useful I can buy for my trip into the tower. It's better to be too prepared than not prepared at all. I definitely can't head into the tower without any preparations. With that thought in mind, I started wandering around the area where adventurers and merchants gathered. Chapter 23 Preparations. As I stepped out of the guild building, I was immediately engulfed by the lively atmosphere where adventurers, craftsmen, and merchants congregated. This was where the heart of the tower's community beat the strongest, a bustling marketplace. Reflecting on my situation, I faced a unique challenge that went beyond the usual concerns of an adventurer. My power, while unique in its own way, came with a distinct drawback beyond the pain and health it demanded. It incinerated my clothing, leaving me quite literally with nothing but ashes. Wearing a set of clothes scavenged from one of the unfortunate souls that had fallen from my previous group, I pondered over a practical solution. I needed a way to manage my wardrobe malfunctions caused by my pyromancer abilities. The answer, it seemed, was straightforward yet essential: a spare pair of pants. This way, when I emerged from the tower, I could quickly adapt from my battle-induced state of undress to a more socially acceptable appearance. Inside the tower, where the only eyes on me would be those of beasts, modesty was less of a concern. The practicality of venturing through its levels unencumbered by clothing, given my unique situation, outweighed any discomfort with the idea. Now, it wasn't hard for me to find a spare pair of pants. I also had to think about essentials for my adventure. The essentials for any adventurer embarking on a journey into the tower were fairly straightforward. Armor and weapons for protection and combat, food and water for sustenance, potions for healing and enhancement, and, for those with deeper pockets, magical utility items for various advantages. These items, while costly, could mean the difference between success and failure, life and death. For someone in my unique situation, traditional gear wouldn't suffice. Normal armor and weapons were of no use to me; they'd simply disintegrate under the intense heat generated by my abilities. The solution lay in enchanted equipment, items imbued with magical properties capable of withstanding or even complementing my pyromantic powers. Enchanted equipment is no ordinary item. Beyond their resilience, these items possess a binding property, making them exceptionally valuable to adventurers. Once an item is equipped, it undergoes a magical attunement to its wearer, rendering it ineffective for anyone else. Once bound, the item becomes impervious to the wearer's abilities, as it is considered a part of the wearer themselves. This means that none of my pyromantic abilities would damage the enchanted gear, allowing me to fully harness my powers without the risk of incinerating my equipment. These enchanted items can be discovered within the tower, often as rewards for overcoming its myriad challenges, or crafted by artisans who specialize in working with monster parts obtained within its walls. Each piece of enchanted gear serves a unique function, designed to aid adventurers on their perilous journey through the tower. The specificity of binding ensures that these powerful artifacts remain personal, which also serves as a way to protect themselves from plunderers. However, enchanted gear often remains in the hands of those who first claim it, serving as a bolster and aiding in their continued ascent through the tower's levels. For anyone else, acquiring these items second-hand could cost a small fortune, if they're even available for sale. Enchanted items command exorbitant prices, often beyond the reach of a novice adventurer. Aware of these realities, I realized that aspiring to immediately arm myself with enchanted gear might be overly ambitious, especially given my current resources, which necessitated a different approach. Therefore, I opted for a more modest and immediate solution, securing a spare pair of pants. With the decision about clothing settled, my focus shifted to the next essentials on my list: food and potions. Given the inherent dangers of the tower and the specific drawbacks of my abilities, health potions topped my list of necessities. Mana potions, on the other hand, were irrelevant to me. My skill, blessedly, didn't draw from my mana reserves, a small silvered lining that spared me some expense, allowing me to allocate more resources towards other things. However, what intrigued me the most was the potential for a potion similar to the one that had mitigated effects such as the hypothermia one. Such a potion could be a game-changer, extending my ability's duration beyond the critical 100-second mark before reaching its dangerous threshold. With this in mind, I canvassed the marketplace, approaching every apothecary stall in search of this elusive elixir. Time and again, my inquiries met with the same response: no such potion was available for sale. It seemed that crafting a potion with such specific effects was not a common practice, possibly due to the complexity or rarity of the required ingredients. Determined, I approached one of the apothecaries with a proposal. Would you consider crafting such a potion if I were able to supply the necessary materials? I asked, hoping for a positive response. The apothecary, a middle-aged man with a keen eye for business, stroked his chin thoughtfully before answering. Creating a potion with the effects you described isn't a simple task, he explained. The materials needed are rare and quite expensive. However, he paused, eyeing me curiously. If you can procure these materials yourself, I'd be willing to craft the potion for you free of charge. This would also help me increase my apothecary skill proficiency if I were to make such rare potion. His offer sparked a glimmer of hope within me. Do you know what materials are needed? I inquired, eager to embark on this new quest. The apothecary shook his head. I'm afraid the specifics elude me. Such a potion is beyond the usual requests I receive. You might find more information within the tower itself or from adventurers who've ventured into its deeper levels. But the easiest way is to find a potion blueprint. Intrigued by this new piece of information, I pressed on. And how would one acquire such a blueprint? The black merchant within the tower sells these blueprints among other things. However, most adventurers overlook them, preferring to spend their precious points on more immediately useful items. To many, blueprints are seen as unnecessary, given the focus on survival and advancement. Kyan took the old man's advice to heart, recognizing the practical wisdom in his words. Indeed, spending precious points on a potion blueprint from the black merchant, especially when those points could be used for immediate upgrades like a new weapon or armor, seemed imprudent at first glance. Yet, the very availability of such an option sparked a strategic consideration within me. This blueprint could potentially provide a solution to one of my most pressing challenges, offering a way to extend the use of my abilities without the debilitating side effects. It was a unique need that most adventurers likely didn't face, which perhaps explained the general disinterest in blueprints. For them, the immediate return on investment from weapons or other tangible upgrades was understandably more appealing. Armed with fresh insights and a clear plan of action, I proceeded to finalize my preparations for the initial foray into the tower. The items on my shopping list were modest but essential: an extra pair of pants to address my unique wardrobe challenges, 5 lesser health potions for emergency healing, a selection of food to sustain me, and a water bottle to ensure hydration. With these purchases, I felt a semblance of readiness, a basic level of preparation that would support my survival in the early stages of exploration. Given that there were still several hours left before the guild would finalize the sale of the items I had brought in, and considering that it was only early evening, I saw an opportunity to begin my adventure sooner rather than later. The first floor of the tower beckoned, a perfect testing ground to gain first-hand experience and better understand the challenges and mechanics of this enigmatic structure. With my preparation secured and a sense of cautious optimism, I made my way towards the tower's entrance. Just beyond this bustling marketplace, the entrance to the tower awaited, marked by a swirling white vortex that seemed to pull the very air into its depths. The imposing structure stood before me, its vastness and the promise of untold mysteries within its walls sending a thrill of anticipation through me. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the beginning of a journey that would test my limits and potentially redefine my own existence. The moment I crossed the threshold of the tower, an unexpected sensation enveloped me. My surroundings began to twist and swirl, creating a disorienting vortex that made it difficult to maintain my bearings. It was an uncomfortable, almost nauseating experience, unlike anything I had experienced before. For a few tense seconds, all I could perceive was a chaotic blur, a maelstrom of colors and shapes. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the tumultuous sensation subsided, allowing me to regain my senses and take stock of my new environment. The transition from the outside world to the interior of the tower was jarring, not least because of the abrupt disappearance of the doorway through which I had entered. In its place stood a solid wall, constructed from bricks that bore the marks of age and moisture. It was a clear indication that retreat was not an option, the only way was forward. Chapter 24, Floor 1. As I regained my bearings after the disorienting entrance into the tower, I found myself standing in the remnants of what could only be described as a run-down dungeon. Behind me, where I had expected to find the door through which I entered, was now just the cold, unyielding surface of a cell wall, effectively sealing any thought of retreat. Around me, the dungeon stretched out, a network of similar cells extending from my location, each one as desolate and forgotten as the last. The starkness of the setting was amplified by the worn-out rugs scattered across the stone floor. These faded remnants offered a silent telling of the passage of time and neglect. Bloodstains, now darkened with age, adorned both the floors and walls, suggesting scenes of violence that once played out within these confines. What struck me most, however, were the skeletal remains that lay in disarray within the cells. Each skeleton was most likely the dungeon's former occupants, prisoners perhaps, who had met their end in solitude and desperation. The bones, some scattered, some still eerily assembled in a semblance of their former selves, spoke volumes of the tower's theme. These were not mere decorations, they were forewarnings, etched in bone. The dungeon air was musty with the smell of mold and rot. Cobwebs adorned every corner, with spiders finding sanctuary in the dungeon's neglect. The only sounds were my own footsteps and the occasional, eerie creak from the bowels of the structure, as if the tower itself was alive and aware of my presence. Standing in that cell, I was acutely aware of the solemnity of my surroundings. The sight of the skeletal remains was a sobering welcome to the tower's realities, a clear message that failure here was final. Approaching the cell door, I noticed it was slightly open, hanging halfway unlocked as if left that way purposefully. Creak. Grasping the cold metal, I pushed it fully open, its hinges protesting with a loud, grating creak that echoed ominously through the silent room. Leaving the half-open gate of my cell behind, I found myself in a narrow hallway flanked by rows of similar cells on both the left and right. The only source of light flickered from sconces mounted sporadically along the walls. As I walked, each cell I passed was like a dark mirror reflecting the same scene of despair: skeletal remains lay scattered or slumped against walls. Eventually, the hallway ended, giving way to a stairway that loomed at its end. The stairs, carved from the same cold stone as the dungeon itself, spiraled upward into darkness. Reaching the top of the stairs, I was met with a wooden door, its surface rough and worn from age, out of place against the rest of the stone around me. It stood as a barrier between me and what lay ahead. With a cautious hand, I pushed against it, the door giving way with heavy resistance. It opened slowly, creating just enough space for me to peer through to the other side. Through the small opening I made, I took a careful look around. From what I could see, there wasn't anything moving, no signs of life at all, just a long hallway that kept going with more doors like the one I was opening. These doors were evenly spaced along the hallway, hinting at more cell-like rooms behind them, similar to the one I had just left. The quiet was unsettling. Not a whisper of movement, not a shadow of a living being disturbed the stillness of the hallway. It was as if the tower itself was holding its breath, watching as I prepared to step into the unknown. The only companions to my cautious observation were the flickering lights from sconces that dotted the hallway, casting a dim illumination that did little to dispel the overarching gloom. Stepping through the door, my focus was on what lay ahead in the seemingly endless hallway. However, my stride was momentarily halted, not by fear, but by surprise, as I nearly stumbled upon a skeleton lying just beside the door's entrance. It was an unexpected sight, not because it was particularly horrifying. I had already encountered skeletons in the cells, but because I hadn't noticed it at first glance. This skeleton differed from the others I had seen. Beside it lay a sword, its presence suggesting the skeleton once had a role far different from those of the unfortunate prisoners. The blade, though dulled by time, hinted at battles fought or duties performed. More notably, atop its skull sat a silver cone-like helmet, snugly fitting even in death. This detail alone significantly altered my perception of who this individual might have been. The helmet, with its practical design and pointed top, was a clear indicator of a guard's role, perhaps a prison guard or someone with a certain level of authority within this dungeon. It was easy to imagine this figure in life, standing guard, ever watchful for threats or perhaps overseeing the dungeon's dismal occupants. The proximity of this guarded post to the entrance I had just come through spoke volumes of a dedication that lasted until the very end. The initial surprise from encountering the skeletal guard faded quickly as I turned my focus to the path ahead. The hallway branched off to the right and left, each direction stretching into the unknown, while the possibility of hidden events or secrets behind each door piqued my curiosity. I wasn't about to leave any stone unturned, aware that any overlooked detail could mean missing out on valuable points or rewards. As I weighed my options, considering which way to go first and the strategy of opening each door, an unexpected change in the environment caught my attention. A shadow, distinct from my own, formed on the ground behind me. The sudden appearance of this new shadow amidst the dimly lit hallway was enough to raise an immediate alarm. Reacting instinctively, I turned around. The sight that greeted me was as astonishing as it was inexplicable. The skeletal guard, which moments before had been lifeless on the ground near the door, was now ominously animated. Its sword was raised high above its head, poised to strike down in my direction. With the sword bearing down on me, there was no time for further shock or contemplation. The urgency of the situation demanded immediate action. I lunged into a quick, evasive roll. The cold stone floor scraped against my skin as I executed a swift dodge, the donkey rolled, propelling me out of the sword's deadly trajectory. I felt the rush of air and the faintest brush of cold metal as the sword swiped through the space I had occupied just a heartbeat earlier, narrowly escaping what could have been a fatal blow. Landing in a crouch, I quickly scanned my surroundings to reassess my position and the skeletal guard's next move. The animated skeleton, a silent sentinel no longer, turned its hollow gaze towards me, its movements eerily fluid for a being of bone. It was clear now, the foes that roamed the first floor of the tower were undead. The skeletal guard's sudden animation from deathly stillness to aggressive assailant was a stark introduction to the kind of adversaries I would be facing here. With a quick decision, I tossed my bag to the side, ensuring the spare pants and health potions I had just acquired wouldn't be consumed by the flames I was about to summon. Engaging the self-immolation skill, the familiar searing pain enveloped me. Despite the agony, there was a growing sense of familiarity with the sensation, or perhaps the imminent danger sharpened my tolerance for it. Yet, the skill's life-draining effect didn't afford me the luxury of hesitation. Time was against me, with only about 90 seconds before the skill's effects would overwhelm me. As the flames cloaked my body, I charged towards the skeletal guard. Its movements, hindered by the lack of muscles and the heavy sword it wielded, were predictably sluggish. This allowed me to easily sidestep its clumsy swing, closing the distance between us with rapid strides. Seizing the moment, I launched a swift punch, my flaming fist connecting with the skeleton's ribcage. The impact sent a shower of sparks into the air, the heat from my flames blackening the bone. It was a strange sensation, fighting with fire as my fist, feeling the resistance of the skeleton's frame against the force of my attack. The skeleton staggered back from the force, its structure compromised, but not yet defeated. But, I knew then, that brute force was more than enough to deal with it. The skeleton, reeling from the initial impact, seemed less of a formidable adversary than I had first anticipated. Its once intimidating stance now revealed its inherent fragility, a vulnerability I was ready to exploit. My fists, sheathed in fire, stroked the skeleton with a series of rapid blows that it could neither evade nor counter. The heat from my flaming aura intensified with each hit, charring bone and sending cracks spiderwebbing through the skeleton's frame. It attempted to retaliate, swinging its sword in desperate, faltering arcs, but its efforts were futile. The disparity in our strength was clear, and with every hit I landed, that gap only widened. The final blow came swiftly, a punch that connected with the skeleton's skull, causing it to shatter into a shower of embers and bone fragments. The rest of its body, now unsupported, collapsed into a heap on the cold stone floor. You have defeated Skeleton Guard. You have gained 1 point. Chapter 25, Floor 1, Part 2. As the skeleton guard collapsed into a heap of bones, the air around me hummed with the echo of an unseen chime, a system notification materializing itself. You have defeated Skeleton Guard. You have gained 1 point. This brief message, floating before my eyes, it confirmed my victory and introduced me to the point system allocation, an essential currency of progress here. Underscoring the importance of every encounter within these walls, where victories translated into the currency of advancement. With the notification fading away, I found myself alone once more, the weight of the silence around me only punctuated by my own breathing. This first victory lent me a quiet confidence, a sense that, perhaps, my current strength was enough to progress through the floor. Standing over the defeated skeleton guard, I caught sight of the silver helmet and the rusty sword by its side. The sword, appealing in its own right, didn't seem practical for my needs. My skills required no such weaponry, so I left it there. The helmet, however, drew my attention. Despite the cramped space in my inventory, I felt compelled to pick it up. The decision wasn't about carrying it away, it was about putting it to immediate use. Conical helmet. Enchanted, no. Stats, defense +5. It struck me that even though activating my self-immolation skill could eventually destroy the helmet since it wasn't an enchanted item, it could offer some temporary defense. It might last a bit before succumbing to the intense heat of my ability. Defense is defense, I reasoned, even if it's only for a short duration. This moment of contemplation shed light on something I hadn't fully considered before. The tower wasn't just an endless series of challenges, it was also ripe with resources, with potential tools and items discarded by those who came before. The practicality of utilizing such finds was clear, but I also recognized the need for a more efficient way to manage them. A larger bag might solve the storage issue, yet navigating the tower's unpredictable dangers with a bulky load could prove cumbersome. For the moment, I had to prioritize. Dealing with the tower's immediate challenges was paramount, and making do with what I had was part of that. Opting to wear the helmet but leave the sword was a decision influenced by this new approach to survive here. As I placed the helmet on my head, adjusting it for a snug fit, another consideration briefly crossed my mind: the bones of the skeleton guard. Could they be useful for crafting something down the line? Yet, with my bag already stretched for space and the unknown treasures this floor might hold, I decided against collecting them. There would be time later to consider such options, once I had a clearer understanding of the tower's offerings and perhaps more room to carry potential loot. With these decisions made, my focus returned to the path ahead. The hallway stretched out before me, doors lining both sides. Deciding that exploration was key to process towards the next floor, I resolved to investigate each room. Starting with the first door on the right, I cautiously pushed it open and found another set of stairs descending into darkness, mirroring the entrance to my initial holding cell. As I descended, the eerie silence of the stairwell gave way to the soft clinks and clatters of movement below. This room, unlike the one I had woken up in, was alive with activity. Skeletal figures paced within their cells, their bony fingers grasping at the air, a macabre mimicry of life. The only one roaming free was another skeleton guard, keys jangling from its waist as it patrolled the hallway between the cells. Seeing the guard, I could probably handle this skeleton without resorting to my self-immolation skill, conserving my health for potential danger. Yet, I chose to ignite the flames once more, for a couple of critical reasons. Firstly, each use of my ability was a chance to refine it, to push the proficiency of both self-immolation and enduring vitality ever higher, eventually increasing its level. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, was the opportunity to test my limits, to endure the self-inflicted harm in hopes of increasing my vitality attribute. The pain was a small price to pay for the potential gains. Activating my self-immolation, flames enveloped me. The heat was intense as usual, but the helmet I'd donned earlier remained surprisingly resistant. It was a small victory, the durability of whatever metal it was forged from held on quite well. The skeleton guard turned, its empty sockets seeming to fixate on the blazing figure before it. But this battle was over before it truly began. With a few swift movements, I closed the distance between us. The guard, predictable in its offense, swung its sword in a wide arc, a move I easily sidestepped. My counter was immediate, a barrage of punches, each enveloped in flames, connecting with the brittle bones of the skeleton. In the periphery of my vision, the other skeletons within their cells became more animated, as if spurred by my visit. They hammered against the cold, unyielding steel of their cages with bony hands, a futile yet frenzied attempt to break free. The sound of bone striking metal rang out. These skeletal prisoners' actions, though desperate, were in vain. The bars held firm, unyielding to their lacking skeletal strength. It was a strange sight, witnessing these remnants of the past so vigorously trying to partake in the present's conflict. The guard stood no chance, quickly becoming another pile of bones on the dungeon floor. Victory was swift, the guard's defeat barely a challenge. But it wasn't the end, it was an opportunity. You have defeated Skeleton Guard. You have gained 1 point. The keys it had carried clinked against the stone as I picked them up, weighing them in my hand. Each skeleton prisoner represented a potential gain, points that could aid in my journey through the tower. I approached the first cell. Unlocking it, I prepared to face the skeleton inside. One by one, I opened each cage, engaging the inhabitants in combat. Despite their eagerness to attack, they were no match for me. My flames made quick work of them, each victory adding to my growing tally of points. The process was methodical. As I moved from cell to cell, each defeated skeleton, each unlocked cage, provided additional points. You have defeated skeleton prisoner. You have gained 1 point. You have defeated skeleton prisoner. You have gained 1 point. You have defeated skeleton prisoner. You have gained 1 point. You have defeated skeleton prisoner. You have gained 1 point. With the last skeleton prisoner dispatched, the room fell silent once more. Holding onto the keys after the final skeleton felt like a strategic move. These keys, though they seemed momentarily redundant, carried potential value beyond this room. If other sections of this floor were structured similarly, with skeleton guards patrolling and prisoners locked away, then these keys could prove essential. The thought that they might not be unique to just this room lingered in my mind. Perhaps they were a universal tool within this part of the tower, capable of unlocking other doors. The prospect was too significant to ignore. I pocketed the keys inside of my bag, a constant reminder to utilize every resource and to consider every possible angle. Reaching the top of the stairs, I paused at the hallway, considering my next move. I took a deep breath and walked towards the next door on the right. I reached out and pushed it open, ready for whatever was going to come at me next. This wasn't just about one door, it was about all of them. I was going to open every door, face every enemy inside, one by one. This was my plan, to keep going, door by door, until I had checked them all. No backing down, no skipping any challenges. Every door in this hallway was going to be opened by me, and I was going to deal with whatever I found behind them. Chapter 26 First Event. As I ventured forward, methodically opening each room and confronting the skeletons within, I gradually accumulated an additional 15 points, each victory over the skeletal foes contributing to my growing tally. After defeating 15 skeletons, I found myself standing before the last door on the far right pathway. This door was unlike the others I had encountered so far. It was larger, with a grandeur that demanded attention. The wood was aged yet sturdy, the iron bands that reinforced it were adorned with intricate designs, and at its center, an elaborate keyhole caught my eye, a design so specific and complex, it was clear no ordinary key would unlock it. I tried the key that had served me well thus far, the one that had unlocked the other cells, but it was futile. The keyhole, with its unique design, seemed to be waiting for its perfect counterpart, a key I had not yet found. It was a challenge laid out by the tower, teasing the possibility of what lay beyond. With no way to proceed through this door, I knew I had to continue exploring the rest of the floor, to uncover the key that would unlock this unknown path. Turning away from the enigmatic door that had halted my progress, I retraced my steps to the initial point where my journey within this floor had begun. This time, I veered left, immersing myself once more in the methodical process of opening doors and confronting the skeletal enemies that dwelled within. Each room brought with it a new skirmish, a brief combat that ended with me standing victorious. Through these encounters, I amassed an additional 20 points. After navigating through this series of challenges once again, my path culminated in front of another large door. Unlike the previous one, marked by its intricate design and elusive keyhole, this door stood in stark simplicity. There was no keyhole to ponder over, no elaborate lock to decipher. It was, for all intents and purposes, a straightforward barrier that could be pushed open. The simplicity of its design, devoid of the complexities that had characterized the previous door, underscored a clear message: whatever lay beyond was meant to be faced head-on, an inevitable confrontation that could not be bypassed or delayed. In the rooms prior, I had spared no effort in searching for keys, secrets, or any indication of hidden rooms or events that might offer an advantage or reveal deeper layers of the tower's mysteries. Yet, my search yielded nothing of significance, no hidden pathways nor concealed treasures. This realization brought a sharpened focus to the moment at hand. The door before me represented not just a physical threshold, but a pivotal point in my exploration of this floor. With a deep breath to steady myself, I pressed against the door, feeling its weight yield under my hand. As I pushed the door open, the expanse that unfolded before me took me aback. It was a grand hallway, reminiscent of the one used by my family for our coming-of-age ceremonies, a vast space designed to accommodate hundreds, a place of celebration and initiation. Yet, in stark contrast to its purpose, this hallway stood desolate, void of life or any tangible presence. Bam! Stepping forward, the door behind me slammed shut with an ominous thud. My attempts to reopen it proved futile. It was immovable, sealed as if it had never been meant to open again. A realization dawned on me in that moment, wariness settling in. The system's notification flashed before my eyes, stark and uncompromising. Event. Quest, survive the coming waves of enemies. Reward, points, skeletal key. Failure, death. Event rewards will be distributed upon the conclusion of the event. Please note that points awarded for defeating enemies are separate and do not contribute to the overall event rewards. The tower had ushered me into my very first event, a trial not of ceremony but of survival. There was no turning back now, no avenue for retreat. I stood alone in the vastness of the hallway, surrounded by silence that was about to be shattered by the impending event. The room was suddenly alight with an otherworldly glow, marking the corners with intricate, circular designs that pierced the darkness with their purple luminescence. It was a sight both fascinating and ominous, signaling the beginning of the tower's trial. Wave 1. Start. From each glowing sigil, a skeleton emerged, stepping into the room with an eerie grace. These were no different from the skeletal guards or prisoners I had encountered earlier, bone and silence, armed with rusted weapons. Yet, as one skeleton stepped forward, another followed from the same glowing circle, multiplying the threat. 4, 8, 12, the numbers grew rapidly until the room swarmed with them, a legion of the dead converging on me with a singular purpose. Well, this escalated quickly. I muttered to myself, eyeing the advancing skeletons with incredulity. The ones in the cell room were manageable, but this is a proper welcome party. Seems like the tower doesn't believe in easing newcomers in. The wave of enemies surged forward in a relentless tide, each skeleton moving with the unyielding intent to overwhelm and destroy. The sheer number of adversaries was too much to handle, but having no other choice, I had to struggle past this. Faced with the sheer number of enemies, I realized that any plan I might have had was worthless against such overwhelming odds. My only option was to trust in myself and my abilities, to fight with everything I had. As the first wave of skeletons closed in, they swung their swords in wide arcs, aiming to end the fight before it truly began. I dodged and countered where I could, but for every skeleton I focused on, another seemed to find an opening. God! A sharp pain shot through my arm as a blade sliced through my flesh from behind. The pain sharp but not debilitating. Pain is just a signal, I muttered through clenched teeth, using the momentary agony to sharpen my focus. Each hit I landed on them sent bones scattering. You have defeated skeleton. You have gained 1 point. But the momentary victories were just that, momentary. As one fell, another took its place, a seemingly endless cycle of attack and defense. You have defeated skeleton. You have gained 1 point. For every skeleton I dispatched, it felt as though 2 more were ready to take its place. The situation was becoming dire. The cuts and scrapes I accumulated were testaments to the skeleton's relentless assault. Is this all you've got? I shouted, half in defiance, half in desperation. My voice echoed off the stone walls, a lone human voice amidst the clatter of bone on stone. With every breath, the pain from my wounds mingled with the heat of my flames, creating a maelstrom of sensation that was both excruciating and exhilarating. I was being whittled down, slowly but surely, yet my spirit remained unbroken. The skeletons, relentless in their pursuit, gave no quarter, and I gave none in return. A skeleton lunged at me with its sword raised high, aiming for a killing blow. Reacting instinctively, I executed a swift donkey roll, evading the attack with inches to spare. The momentary space I gained was all I needed. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, I saw an opening. Rapidly, I extinguished my flames, the heat dissipating around me as I reached for my bag lying just out of the fray. My fingers grasped a healing potion, one of the few I had wisely prepared for this exact kind of situation. Uncorking it in a fluid motion, I downed the contents in a single gulp, feeling the liquid's potent effect coursing through my veins, mending wounds and restoring vigor. The potion's effect was immediate. I could feel my health quickly returning to me. I glanced at the remaining potions in my bag, only 3 left. Each one was a lifeline, a precious resource that may be used during the coming waves. Knowing this, I steeled myself for the fight ahead. With my health partially restored, I stood back up, as the enemies did not provide any respite for me to use. "All right, let's keep going," I muttered to myself, determination firm in my voice. The potion had given me a second wind, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste. The battle raged on, each clash of bone against flesh. Each skeleton I faced fell one by one, their bones clattering to the ground. Despite the overwhelming odds, I found a way to prevail, chipping away at their numbers until the once crowded room started to clear. The air was thick with the smell of charred bones. It was a surreal moment, standing alone amidst the remains of what had been an army of skeletons. Then, the silence was broken by the familiar chime of a system notification. "Congratulations! You have completed the first wave. You have defeated 50 skeletons. You have earned a tally of 50p. Second wave will begin in 120 seconds. A brief moment of respite granted before the next challenge." Exhausted yet exhilarated, I took a moment to catch my breath, the weight of the victory sinking in. Turning off the searing embrace of my self-immolation skill, I allowed the soothing power of enduring vitality to wash over me, mending my wounds and restoring my health in preparation for the challenges that lay next. The message was clear: this was only the beginning. Another wave was on the horizon, promising greater danger. Chapter 27: Second Wave. After beating the first wave of enemies, I had just a little time to catch my breath before the next round kicked off. Standing in the middle of the big room, I looked around at all the bones scattered everywhere. It was quiet for a moment, but I knew it wouldn't last long. Soon enough, the room lit up again with those summoning circles in each corner. This time, however, the enemies that emerged were armored skeletons, each brandishing weapons with far better quality than previously seen. It was clear that the tower was escalating its challenge. Great, now they're getting serious. As if things weren't hard enough before. The first wave had been a brutal introduction, but this was a far too much for a first floor's introduction. As I rekindled my self-immolation, feeling the familiar sear of flames against my skin, I steeled myself for the battle. The armored skeletons advanced, their movements more coordinated and dangerous than their predecessors. The first skeleton reached me, its sword aimed straight at my torso. Reacting purely on instinct, I dodged to the side, barely avoiding the blade. My counterattack was clumsy, a simple punch fueled by my burning aura. The skeleton recoiled from the impact, but it was hardly enough to bring it down. Their armor absorbed much of the impact, proving that these foes would not be as easily defeated. Surrounded by enemies, I found myself constantly on the move, trying to keep them at bay. My dodges were awkward, my movements untrained and desperate. Each time I focused on one skeleton, another would find an opening, its blade cutting through my flesh. The same scenario as the previous one happening once again in real time. But against much harder opponents to deal with. I found myself constantly moving, relying on agility to keep the skeletons at bay. Facing the relentless tide of armored skeletons, I quickly realized brute force alone wouldn't suffice. As the skeletal warriors closed in, an idea sparked within me, a tactical shift that could offer me a slight edge. Seizing the opportunity, I lunged at the nearest skeleton, its body covered in armor. With a swift move, I wrapped my arm around its skeletal frame from behind, hoisting it up as a makeshift shield. The skeletons, devoid of any semblance of self-preservation or concern for their kind, continued their assault, their weapons clanging against the armored shell of their comrade. Each strike intended for me found its mark on the unfortunate skeleton I held, its armor rattling with the impact of blows from its brethren. This might actually work. The strategy was strange, yet effective. The captive skeleton's armor bore the brunt of the onslaught, sparing me from the direct hits that had previously marred my flesh. As the skeleton in my grasp began to crumble under the unrelenting attack, I wasted no time. Dropping its battered form, I darted towards another well-armored foe. With a quick maneuver, I repeated the process, hoisting it into position as my next living shield. This cycle of desperation and survival became a rhythm. Grab, defend, and discard, each action carried out with a growing sense of adaptation. The skeletons, for all their relentless aggression, couldn't counter this simple yet effective tactic. You have gone past your body's limit. You have gained 1 vitality stat. As the notification of my vitality increase flashed before my eyes once more, a grin inevitably found its way across my face, an almost reflexive response to the reminder of my uniqueness. Each acknowledgement from the system wasn't just a digital affirmation, it was a nod to my singular path, a journey no one else was on. I had always considered myself stoic, a man unswayed by change or fortune. But as I delved deeper into my potential, as I peeled back the layers of what I could become, I felt a genuine sense of self emerging, a vibrant, undeniable presence that was all my own. A chuckle escaped me, to think I considered myself stoic, unchangeable. But here I am, climbing faster than most. Wealth, power, they unveil our true selves, don't they? And what I see, what I'm becoming, I welcome it. This realization was akin to the transformation wealth brings. Many proclaim they'd remain unchanged if fortune smiled upon them, yet reality often tells a different tale. Wealth, like power, reveals our true nature, for better or worse. And here I was, in the throes of discovering mine. I had once believed that even amidst power, my humility would stand unchallenged. Yet, the thrill of discovering my abilities, the intoxicating climb of my stats, shifted something within me. My humility, though not entirely forsaken, was now accompanied by an unapologetic thirst for more, for greatness that I had begun to embrace without reserve. This hunger for power, it pulsed within me, driving me forward. But it was a craving not born of malice or a desire to dominate the weak. It stemmed from a deep-seated yearning to explore the extent of my being, to push the boundaries of what I was capable of. I glanced down at my hands, still glowing with the raging flames of my power. This hunger for strength, it's not about dominion over others. This power, I'll use it, yes. But on my terms. To carve out my destiny. Not as a tyrant, but as someone who wielded it with purpose. Recognizing this didn't cause me a crisis, but rather gave me a clear vision. Yes, I sought power, relished it, and would undoubtedly use it to carve my path. I'd do it my way, following my own rules that, even though they might change a bit, always stick to a basic principle, not to hurt those who can't protect themselves. This understanding didn't weaken me, it fortified my resolve. It was a realization that the true me, the version of my true self, was being forged in the heat of battle and growth. The current dangers were fleeting, my future was boundless. I reveled in the struggle, in the pain, for it was forging me into something beyond their understanding, beyond their reach. At times, I seized the nearest skeleton, using its armored body to absorb the blows aimed at me. Other times, I faced my adversaries head-on, with the toll of the continuous battle becoming increasingly evident. With a quick glance towards my bag, still lying on the floor where I had left it to avoid damage from my flames, I knew what I had to do. Darting back, I retrieved another health potion from my dwindling supply. The liquid's restorative properties worked quickly, mending the wounds that marred my body and replenishing a percentage of my health. I moved through the skeletal ranks with a mix of offensive and defensive maneuvers. With each fallen skeleton, the room slowly began to clear, the number of adversaries dwindling as I pushed through the exhaustion. But as the final skeleton collapsed into a heap of charred bone and ash, a profound silence fell over the room. Congratulations! You have completed the second wave. You have defeated 40 reinforced skeletons. You have earned a tally of 40p. Third wave will begin in 120 seconds. As I deactivated my flames, taking deep breaths, I assessed the room around me. The quiet was a stark contrast to the chaos of moments ago. As I awaited the impending third wave, I leaned down to pick up my bag, ensuring my remaining health potions were secure and within easy reach. The physical toll of the battles was evident in the dwindling number of potions. I had just 2 left. A strategic part of me lamented the need to use another so soon, but survival was paramount. Therefore, I decided against it since I wasn't sure how many waves were still ahead. 2 minutes. That's all I had to prepare, to catch my breath and steel my nerves for the third challenge to come. In that brief moment, I assessed my situation. The helmet I had been wearing was now just a wreck of what it used to be, and I had discarded it. Fortunately, there were many pieces of armor scattered on the ground from the defeated skeletons. So, I decided to pick up a new helmet and a light chest armor. Although they didn't offer much protection, it was still better than nothing, especially since I had no idea what kind of enemy I would face next. The tower didn't wait long to introduce the next wave. The brief interlude ended as abruptly as it began. The summoning circles flared to life once more, heralding the arrival of the third wave. Bring it on! Chapter 28 Third Wave. The summoning circles flashed to life, signaling the start of the third wave. I braced myself, expecting another onslaught of armored skeletons. Sure enough, the reinforced skeletons began to emerge. But as the battlefield filled, something new caught my eye. A skeletal figure, markedly different from its counterparts, stepped into the fray. Clad not in armor but in a simple robe, the figure stood out starkly against the sea of clanking bones and metal. Its hood was pulled low over its skull, giving it an air of mystery. In its bony grip was a staff, large and seemingly cumbersome, yet it held it with intention. I couldn't help but narrow my eyes in intrigue. This was no ordinary skeleton, this was something else, something more. The robed skeleton raised its staff, and the air around it crackled with mysterious energy. As the reinforced skeletons advanced, the robed figure remained behind, its staff beginning to glow with a menacing light. Then, to my surprise, flames began to manifest above the staff's head, swiftly converging at its center and rapidly growing in size. A skeleton mage. I had faced nothing but physical threats until now, and the introduction of magic into the battle was a curveball I hadn't anticipated so soon. I realized then that my strategy could not be repeated. The sheer number of enemies was no longer the only factor to look out for. Now, I had to contend with the unknown capabilities of magic. The first spell was cast, a ball of fire hurtling towards me from the skeleton's staff. I darted between the skeletons, easily evading the spell meant to harm me. The skeletons, mindlessly dedicated to their task, offered no reaction as the mage's fireball detonated among them. The explosion carved a drape of destruction through their ranks, reducing several to piles of charred bones. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their own ally had thinned their numbers, inadvertently aiding my survival. Talk about friendly fire. The mage, undeterred by its collateral damage, was already summoning another spell. The skeleton mage, while a significant threat on its own, also presented an opportunity, a chance to use the tower's forces against themselves. I focused on the mage, trying to anticipate its next move while remaining acutely aware of the warriors still pressing in. Their numbers might have been reduced, but they remained a constant threat as their numbers kept increasing. As the mage prepared its next spell, I made a split-second decision. Rather than directly attacking, I positioned myself so the next fireball would have to pass through a cluster of its skeletal comrades to reach me. The strategy paid off. The mage, seemingly oblivious to the consequences, released another fiery orb. I dodged at the last moment, the fireball passing harmlessly by me and into the group of skeletons I had maneuvered behind. Another explosion rocked the chamber, and more skeletons were obliterated. The tactic felt almost too easy. I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. My instincts were proven right when another robed skeleton materialized from the opposite summoning circle, its staff already humming with the buildup of another spell. Of course, it couldn't be that simple. The appearance of the second skeleton mage forced me to split my focus three-way. Dodging projectiles from one was manageable, evading the skeleton warriors simultaneously was a test of my reflexes and awareness. However, the addition of a second mage to this already precarious scenario made the situation even more complex. I darted and weaved, using the cover of the warrior skeletons when possible, turning the mage's indiscriminate attacks to my advantage. But it was all I had. Throughout this ordeal, I strategically chose not to trigger my self-immolation, opting instead to rely solely on the mage's spells to deal with the enemies in close quarters. This approach was essentially my method of preserving my health points as much as possible to avoid unnecessarily consuming another health potion when it wasn't absolutely necessary. Just when I thought I had adapted to this new level of complexity, the tower threw yet another curveball. 2 more mages appeared, each taking a corner of the room. Now, all 4 corners of the chamber were sources of deadly magical assaults. Now, spells were flying at me from all corners, making it impossible to dodge them all. My ability to stay aware of everything around me just wasn't enough, and my evasive methods couldn't save me from every attack. In this chaos, my focus wavered. I found myself unable to predict and dodge as I had before. Then, amidst my desperate attempts to navigate the barrage of attacks, a fireball struck me directly. I braced for the devastating impact, expecting to be overwhelmed by excruciating pain, or worse, meet my end. Bam! The fireball struck me squarely, and for a moment, I was engulfed in flames. Contrary to my expectations, however, the pain, while sharp, was not as catastrophic as I had feared. It was undeniably intense, yet strangely bearable. As the initial shock subsided, a realization dawned on me: the flames was not as lethal as the self-immolation I had willingly subjected myself to in past battles. My own flames were far more ferocious and unyielding than those wielded by my enemies. This unexpected insight led me to question why the enemy's flames felt almost mild in comparison. Could it be that my frequent use of self-immolation had inadvertently forged a resilience within me? Reflecting, I recognized a pattern. Each time I activated my self-immolation, and the longer I endured its blistering embrace, the less overwhelming the pain became. Despite the agony being almost unbearable at first, it seemed to diminish with each subsequent use. Was I, then, developing an innate resistance to fire? This thought lingered in my mind. It was as if I was undergoing a baptism of fire without realizing it. If my body was indeed becoming more tolerant of flames through repeated exposure to my own self-immolation, then it stood to reason that the spells of these skeleton mages might pose less of a threat than I had initially feared. As the idea took root, a daring strategy formed in my mind. What if I could turn my own flames into a shield against the mage's fire? With a sense of reckless curiosity that had guided many of my decisions thus far, I decided to test my hypothesis. As I activated my self-immolation skill, the intense flames that erupted from my body dwarfed the residual heat from the mage's previous attack. I stood his ground as another fiery projectile approached my direction. With a thudding impact, the flame collided with me directly. To my astonishment, the flame swirled around my fiery aura but failed to inflict any additional damage. Instead of the searing pain I braced myself for, I was greeted by an unexpected window notification floating before my eyes, offering a revelation that would fundamentally change my approach. All flame-based attacks of lower intensity than the user's self-immolation ability have been neutralized and will not inflict damage. Ha! Ha ha ha! Once more, an unexpected advantage. As I stood amidst the battlefield, surrounded by the lesser flames of the skeleton mages, I readied myself to end this wave. Chapter 29's Third Wave. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. In a sense, I was still grappling with disbelief, yet the rush of exhilaration surging through me was undeniable. The magical flames conjured by the skeleton mages merely flickered and danced harmlessly against my own blazing aura. A sense of amazement overtook me. So, this is how it feels to have an edge against magic. I mused to myself, my spirit soaring as each spell cast in my direction proved futile. As I navigated the numerous waves of enemy, a profound realization dawned on me about my seemingly so-called cursed ability. Every new discovery, every leap in understanding, seemed to steer me towards confrontations with fire, whether battling my own flames or those used by others. This realization led me to a startling thought: what I had once considered a curse might indeed harbor truth, all taught with a nuanced understanding. This power wasn't a curse designed to harm me in the broad sense of thing. Instead, it was a targeted bane against those of the Flame faction. This ability, which had seemed so daunting, was shaping into a formidable foundation that any flame wielder, especially pyromancers like those from my own family, the Arashi, would fear. The thought struck me with a mix of irony and satisfaction. The very power that had set me apart from them, that had led to my isolation, was now evolving into a force that could challenge their dominance. The idea that I was becoming a creature that could be the bane of all flame wielders, especially those of my own lineage, carried an ominous undertone for them. It wasn't just about the power itself, but what it represented, a shift in the dynamics of power, a challenge to the status quo within the pyromancer community and my family. This growing affinity to flames hinted at a destiny far removed from the life I had expected. It was as if destiny, with its unending trials and revelations, was forging me into a living weapon of sort for a purpose that I had yet been introduced to. I might actually be able to achieve my goal. This wasn't just a fleeting hope or a distant dream anymore. The goal I had set for myself, to disentangle my mother from the Arashi's clutches and provide her with the peace, quiet, and happiness she truly deserved, suddenly felt within reach. The journey, I knew, was far from simple. The complexities of their influence and the potential consequences of such a move had always made the goal seem daunting, almost insurmountable. But now, with every revelation about my abilities, I was beginning to see a path forward. However, I wasn't naive. The notification had explicitly stated that my ability could only neutralize flames of a lower intensity than my own. I knew where I stood in the hierarchy of power within my own family. As a fledgling member, my abilities, while unique, were not yet formidable enough to challenge those entrenched in their mastery of pyromancy. The disparity was clear, a rift that couldn't be bridged by determination alone. If I was to stand any chance against the higher echelons of the Arashi, let alone the Patriarch, my abilities needed to evolve. It wasn't enough to simply survive the tower's challenges, I needed to surpass them, to transform my flames from a mere shield against lesser fires into a force capable of confronting the inferno that awaited me outside its walls. I must become stronger. I am still far too weak. I've grown complacent, basking a little too eagerly in the glow of a few easy victories I've achieved recently. This can't go on, I whispered to myself, acknowledging the harsh truth of my situation. I can't let my ego blind me to the reality of my weaknesses. I nearly forgot the fundamental rule of this world: power reigns supreme. I am far from exceptional, at least not yet. In reality, I am confronted with numerous obstacles that must be overcome before I can even consider achieving my goal. I need to address the continuous health depletion caused by my ability. I must find ways to enhance my offensive and defensive capabilities, especially the former at this point. The only offensive advantage I currently possess is the slight increase in flexibility and strength from the heat radiated to my muscles, although my defense is significantly better, thanks to the numerous advantages my ability offers, such as reduced sensitivity to cold, sterilization, cauterization, among others. It's evident that I require more in terms of offensive skills. Yet, the decision is difficult. Should I prioritize offense and seek an ability that bolsters my combat effectiveness, or should I urgently find a solution to the detrimental life-draining aspect of my power? Whatever. Continuing to dwell on the uncertainties of my ability and the choices before me was an exercise in futility. At this point, my focus needed to be on the task at hand, proceeding with the challenges of the tower. No point in worrying about it now. I muttered to myself. The time to make those critical decisions would eventually come, but for now, I had to move forward. The battle continued in earnest. My strategy was clear: leave the mages alone, while using their spells as a weapon. With deliberate moves, I orchestrated my position so that every mage's assault would inadvertently become a missile against their own. The success of this approach was undeniable. As a fireball hurtled towards me, I stood my ground, evasion unnecessary. I was a front-row spectator to the spectacle of fireballs detonating among the skeleton ranks, reducing them to a cascade of bone shards and dust. This manipulation persisted, gradually thinning their numbers with each passing moment. Eventually, only the mages remained. It was time to direct my attention towards them. Approaching the first mage, aware that the direct confrontation would expose me to their magical assaults. However, this was of no concern to me. The moment the fireball was conjured, it rocketed towards me, but upon contact, it vanished into the protective flames that cloaked me. The mage, stripped of its only source of offense, quickly succumbed to my onslaught, its skeletal frame shattering beneath the might of my strikes. One by one, I turned my attention to each mage, their magical attacks proving futile against me. With each defeated mage, the room grew quieter, the chaotic energy that had filled it just moments ago fading away. Finally, as the last mage fell, silence returned to the chamber. I stood alone amidst the remains of my adversaries, the system notifications chiming in to announce the completion of the third wave. Congratulations! You have completed the third and final wave. You have defeated 60 reinforced skeletons and 4 lesser skeleton mages. You have earned a tally of 80 P. Congratulations! You have completed the quest to survive the coming waves of enemies. You have earned additional rewards. 100 P. Skeletal Key. As the dust settled and the silence enveloped the room, signifying the end of the third wave, a simple, yet unmistakably unique skeletal key appeared before me. Crafted from bone, its design was straightforward, without any intricate carvings or embellishments. The head of the key formed into a skeletal shape gave it a grim, fitting theme for the tower's ambience. I reached out, taking the key into my grasp, its cool bone texture a stark reminder of the battles I'd just endured. Holding the key, a sense of accomplishment washed over me, mixed with relief for having 3 health potions still in reserve. I've earned 311 points, I mused, pondering over the sum. Without a benchmark, it was hard to measure its significance, but intuition told me every point counted. These points were currency in the tower, a means to potentially tip the scales in my favor when I finally encountered the black merchant. With the battle behind me and the key as my next lead, I knew it was time to press on. With a deep breath and the skeletal key as my guide, I made my way back to the door that had previously barred my progress. Let's find out what's behind that door, I resolved as I stepped forward. Chapter 30 Behind the Door. The skeletal key felt cool and slightly rough in my grasp as I made my way back to the locked door. Its simple, bone-crafted design seemed almost mocking in its simplicity. As I approached the door once more, the anticipation within me grew. At this point, the weight of my journey within the tower so far pressed upon me with clarity. Beyond this threshold lay the final challenge of the first floor. I harbored no illusions about what waited beyond. This is where I proved myself, where I faced the guardian of this floor. The concept of a floor guardian wasn't new to me. The boss, a foe that stood as the gatekeeper to the path ahead. These creatures each tasked with the defense of their respective levels within the tower. They were the gatekeepers, the last challenge faced before one could ascend to the next level. The guardians were designed to be the ultimate challenge, embodying the essence and trials of their respective floor. Stepping closer to the door, I couldn't help but second-guess my earlier optimism. It's just the first floor's boss, shouldn't be too rough, right? The thought was more of a hope than a conviction. But understanding the concept and facing the reality were two very different things. Click. The key turned smoothly in the lock, a quiet click breaking the silence that had enveloped me. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for whatever awaited on the other side of the door. Pushing it open, I stepped into a vast chamber, the scale of which dwarfed everything I'd encountered so far. The room was dimly lit, the only light emanating from torches set along the walls. The room was lined with towering pillars. Scattered across the stone floor were piles of bones. There. At the far end of the room featured a staircase, promising passage to the next level. With cautious steps, I ventured further in, my eyes scanning the expanse for any sign of the guardian I knew awaited me. Thud. The door behind me closed with a resonant thud, sealing my fate within. A cold draft swept through the chamber, stirring the bones into a frenzied dance. They clattered and scraped against the stone, swirling toward a focal point in the center of the room. The bones, once scattered and still, now converged in a whirlwind of assembly, clicking and clacking as they found their places in a growing skeletal form. I watched, transfixed, as the skeletal figure took shape. It was more than just bones coming together. It was a force being reborn, a guardian piecing itself together. And then, there it stood, a skeletal behemoth, towering over me, its bones polished by the ages, now gleaming with a sinister light. This was the guardian of the first floor. This boss, standing a formidable 7 feet tall, wielded a massive greatsword that seemed to thirst for battle. Its presence was overwhelming. What caught my attention most, however, was the sinister purple glow emanating from its chest, an aura of malevolence that pulsed with dark energy. Draped across its bony shoulders was a tattered cape, black as the void, fluttering softly in the unnatural wind that filled the chamber. This guardian was not merely a sentinel of bone, it was an entity imbued with dark magic. I knew then, staring up at this creature, that this battle would test me like no other. With the door behind me sealed and the path ahead guarded by this colossal sentinel, I knew what must be done. The battle for the right to ascend to the next floor was about to begin. Igniting my self-immolation, I felt the familiar heat of my flames envelop me, a contrast to the cold malice that radiated from the guardian. The skeletal guardian, its great sword gripped firmly in its hands, remained motionless for a moment, as if giving me the opportunity to take in the full gravity of the situation. Its sinister glow pulsed more intensely, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. The guardian's stillness was unnerving, a silent intimidation tactic that preyed on my nerves. Yet, within me, a fire burned brighter than the one that cloaked my form. Every movement made the flames around me seem to reach out, as if to grasp at the darkness, to push back against the oppressive aura of the guardian. And yet, the guardian's presence was unyielding, its own light, a dark, twisted mimicry of my own, resisting with equal fervor. The room was alive with this struggle, the air charged with energy that seemed to oscillate between warmth and chill with our every exchange. It was a visual representation of our conflicted nature. The warmth of the living and the cold chill of the dead. "I won't be drowned out by your darkness," I declared, my voice cutting through the tension. This clash of light against darkness was a precursor to the physical confrontation that awaited. The guardian's approach was signaled by the screeching sound of metal against stone, sparks flying as its massive greatsword scraped the ground. Screech! The eerie noise filled the chamber. As the guardian sprinted towards me, the dragging sword seemed almost to carve a path towards my standing ground. The guardian's movements, despite its imposing size, were swift. As the guardian closed the distance, its greatsword lifted from the ground, poised for a devastating blow. The air seemed to thicken with tension. Reacting on instinct and training I scarcely knew I possessed, I prepared to dodge. My body tensed, ready to spring to the side at the most optimal possible moment. The flames that cloaked me flickered aggressively, as if agitated by the proximity of the enemy. The guardian's strike came down, a test of might against agility, the heavy blade aiming to cleave through the air where I stood. With a quick sidestep, fueled by a rush of adrenaline, I evaded the blow, the great sword missing me. As the guardian's sword crashed against the stone floor, the sound reverberated throughout the chamber, a testament to the sheer force behind its attack. Yet, it had missed its intended target, me. The impact was not just a miss, it was a display of power, as the stone beneath the sword didn't merely bear a mark but shattered under the force. Debris flew, scattering fragments and dust into the air, the remnants of the floor propelled in every direction. The destruction brought by the sword strike was immediate and visible, highlighting the boss's might. Stone pallets, once part of the solid ground, were now reduced to rubble, illustrating the potential fate awaiting me had the strike found its mark. I couldn't help but notice something peculiar about the guardian. Despite the intense heat of my self-immolation, the chill emanating from the guardian seemed unaffected, if not more pronounced. This observation quickly shifted my understanding of the fight. Up until now, my flames had given me an edge, wearing down my enemies over time, their weapons deteriorating under the relentless heat, their skeletal frames becoming brittle. This foe, however, presented a new challenge. The cold aura it exuded was in direct opposition to my flames, creating a stalemate where neither element gained ground. The room, caught between the clash of fire and chill, settled into an indifferent warmth, effectively nullifying what I had considered an advantage. The usual strategy of wearing down my opponent through prolonged engagement was off the table. The Guardian, an undead, didn't suffer from fatigue, and its weapon, a massive greatsword, showed no sign of weakening under my flames. In contrast, my endurance was finite, my health steadily draining with each second my ability remained active. This realization brought a sense of urgency to the fight. I could no longer rely on attrition to carry me through. The Guardian's chilling aura, as potent as my own fiery onslaught, meant that a drawn-out battle worked against me. I needed to find a way to overcome this adversary without the benefit of my flames whittling away at its defenses. But what other options do I have?